And I think we're live. Good morning to everyone in Poland and good afternoon to our guests connecting from Southeast Asia. Welcome to Asean Morning at Future of Health Poland. Thank you all for finding time to join our today's webinar. My name is Aleksander Czechowski and I'm Business Development Manager at Polish Investment and Trade Agency Singapore branch office. I have the great pleasure to be hosting first part of today's webinar. But before we start, I would like to ask if you can see and hear us well. If yes, kindly click one of the emojis on the panel on your display or simply say hi to us in the chat.
Good morning.
Perfect. I see that we're being seen and heard well. So our today's webinar will be divided into 3 blocks: expert panel, followed by discussion panel, and closing Q&A session accordingly to time we'll have left. If you will have any questions for speakers, please type them into the chat window displayed on your screen during the presentations. In the experts panel, we will try to cover different angles of Asian medtech ecosystem, challenges and opportunities it creates for Polish medtech companies, as well how Polish Investment and Trade Agency can support Polish enterprises in that region. Our today's speakers in order of appearance: Ms. Dominika Kucińska, Senior Specialist, Investment and Trade Agency, Export Center, Warsaw. Mr. Pritcha Bandivier, President of TIMED and Chairman of Asian Federation of Medical Device Industry. Mrs. Marilyn Marquette, Vice President of Operations of Asia Pacific Medical Technology Association, APAC Med, and Mr. Yibin Liu, Executive Director and owner of Access to Healthcare. Without further ado, let me introduce first speaker. Ms. Dominika Kucińska on daily basis is orchestrating workflow of Paih's Asian trade offices, which includes Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Philippines. In her presentation, she will give us economic overlook on Southeast Asia and tell us how Paih can support Polish companies in that part of the world. Dominika, over to you.
Thank you, Oleg, very much for introducing me. Well, let's move on to the presentation. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. And we will speak a little bit about medical industry in Southeast Asia. First of all, we're going to have a glimpse on Southeast Asia in general. We will speak about the characteristics of the region that are universal for all of the countries. And then we'll be moving to 4 examples of the countries that's in which our employees of the trade offices discovered huge opportunities for the medical industry. Also, what is worth mentioning for those who didn't know, we will be using here the word, of course, Asean, which stands for Association of Southeast Asia. So Asean is not only these 4 countries, it has more, but these 4 countries are good examples and good markets to spread to export your products. So when it comes to speaking in general about these 4 countries, it is very difficult to say. It is very difficult to say in general how is it like, because there are very different. Next slide, please. They are very different. If you look at the map, you will see that in this point we have For example, huge Indonesia, which is almost 300 million people, but also we have tiny Singapore, which is 6 million. On the other hand, looking at the, for example, religion, we have Buddhist Thailand, but we have also Muslim Indonesia or Malaysia, which will cause that we will need special certificates, halal certificates to get inside. But to be honest, there are some points that are very common for all of them. Next slide, please. So, for example, when we see when we see the characteristics of the region, we can see that there is a huge increase in the size of the middle class. And it is said that by the Asian Development Bank, that's probably till 2030, the middle class will be 65% of the whole population. So, of course, if we calculate this well, in these 4 countries, we have more than 300 million people, and more or less 65% of all of them will be a middle class, and their expectations of the service, also of the health service, will be exactly the same as middle class. Then we have the increase in health spendings. Of course, sorry, I didn't know that I stopped the camera. Of course, when it comes to the increase in health spendings, right now it is more or less 425 billion US dollars, but it is expected that in the next 5 years, these numbers will be actually almost doubled to 740 billion US dollars. Also, what comes with this very fast development is also, unfortunately, development of chronic and civilization diseases. So it also generates the needs. In spite of the chart that is placed here with number of hospital beds, physicians, nurses, this chart is a little bit old. It's from 2017, so of course some improvements has been done. Please remember, be aware that these countries are abundant in disposable products because they produce them by themselves. So unfortunately, it can be a little bit difficult to sell these products, to export this kind of products there. Okay, so if we have the general characteristics of the region, maybe let's have a look of the unique on the uniqueness of each of the countries that we are talking about. So first of all, we are moving to Thailand. What you are seeing here are not the photos from the 5-star hotel. It is actually a hospital, 5-star hospital, and maybe in spite of what everyone thinks, Thai hospitals are giving a very incredibly high standard. Because of that, right now is the number 5 destinations when it comes to the let's call it medical tourism. So it's number 5 right now, and of course Thailand has ambitions to become well, definitely number 1. Because of that, government offers many incentives. Among them, we have tax holidays, for example, or taxes reduction. So these are the incentives, examples of incentives that the government is giving. Of course, we can be sure that if Thailand wants to be #1 in the region, of course, some more ways to make people want to actually invest there will be created. And private healthcare is extremely extensive in Thailand. For example, I don't know if you are aware of that, but the biggest chains, let's call it, hospital, is valued 41.9 billion Polish zlotys, which makes it even more expensive than the current leader of Polish stock, which is CD Projekt. And now let's move on to another country, which is Singapore. Maybe you are not aware of that, but Singapore has signed the free trade agreement with European Union, which reduces 99% of all of the customs duties. And of course, among them, we have medical devices and pharmaceutical products, which makes a very good country to export. Also, this bureaucratic system in Singapore is quite ordered. We will have a chance to hear about it a little bit more and detailed later on. Singapore is open to innovation, so it has all the ecosystem and ordered for startups and for innovative products. In this case, what's more worth mentioning is that the country has 30 medtech R&D centers, and this is a very good point to export medtech solutions. Also, we have silver tsunami. So what does it mean? Well, it is calculated that by 2050, almost 35% of all of the seniors, of all of the population will become seniors. Because of that, Singapore is trying to convert their health system to be ready for this moment. And because of that also, it is very good destination to export the smart solutions, smart medtech solutions that can be mostly used at home. So so these seniors can be cured at home and not in hospitals. Moving on to another example, which is actually very interesting, and that is Singapore, that is Indonesia, which of course, one of the most unique things is of course its population, which is 270 million people, and it's still growing. At the same time, it's a little bit different than other countries because this population is quite young. The average age is around 50. But and of course, these people will probably want to live better standards, better life than their parents. So the infrastructure also to cure these people in future must be constructed right now. At the same time, these young people and the whole population of Indonesia loves smoking tobacco, and more than 55% of its population having a quick look at this 270 million of people, and well, just sharing its half, it gives a huge number. Well, it's loves it uses they are using tobacco products, and at the same time they're consuming fried and sweet products, so which gives us a little bit an insight on what can be needed in the future. Well, and we are now at the peak points and the momentum of the in the medical equipment market in Indonesia, because around 90% of the equipment is being imported. The government is trying to construct the law that could be friendly to bring these investments and bring these medical products. At the same time, it is worth mentioning, please remember that the public security system is quite young in Indonesia, and it is now under it is under construction, still under construction. So all of the medical devices are more than welcome. And moving on to Malaysia, which is worth mentioning, of course, that well, more than 61% of the population are Muslim. And well, here I put that it makes more than 32 million consumers that can consume halal products, which means perfect for the Muslims. Malaysia, because of that, also is the first is the one that has their own standardizing halal norm. And if you want to enter here, you just need to remember about getting it. Also, please remember about the obesity, because well, it shows some kind of a direction in which Malaysia can go when it comes to its needs, because more than 60% or about 60% of people well, are overweight or are severely obese. Please also remember that Malaysia is producing a lot of products, medical equipment that is at the that it's well, standards hospital equipment. Because of that, if you want to succeed there, well, you need to offer something innovative. There is a huge need of improving medical technology and innovation when it comes, for example, for resonance imaging systems. And moving on to how we can help you. So Polish Investment and Trade Agency has their trade offices all around the world. As you may see, we are of course focusing only on the tiny part of it, and the employees of the foreign trade offices, the head of the trade offices, the business and development managers and experts can help you with developing your list of business partners, organizing B2B meetings, seminars, business missions, or preparing informations. So if you want to export to one of the countries I've mentioned before or any other, you can just contact us. But particularly today, if you want to, if you are thinking about the direction we are talking about, please keep in touch in one of with the responsible people for this offices, and their email addresses, I think are visible on the next slide, and these are the people who are helping you from the offices, because I'm working at the headquarters here in Warsaw, but they are in the countries we are mentioning before. So they have all of the information needed, and they are the experts of doing business in Asia. So thank you very much. And yes, I'm passing the stage to another speaker.
Thank you very much, Dominika. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and your slides. I think it was a great start of today's webinar. And now I would like to welcome our next speaker, joining us today from Bangkok, Thailand, Mr. Pricha Bandive. Mr. Bandive is president of ThaiMed, Thai Medical Device Technology Industry Association, and chairman of Asean Federation of Medical Device Industry. His presentation will cover overall trends of Asian medtech markets, which I believe with extra focus on Thailand. Mr. Pricha, the floor is yours. If you'd kindly share with us your screen and your presentation. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So please, allow me to share my screen. Okay, a few seconds. Okay. So I would like to talk about the Asian market. Okay. Sorry. Okay, can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
No,
Hello?
Pricha, we cannot see your screen.
Okay, a few seconds, let me try, okay. Now we test already, but okay, let me try one more time. Can you see now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so the Asian country, okay, it means 10 countries, as Dominica, okay, already inform you, okay. In Asian, we have a 10 country, okay, 7 country, 9 medical devices associations. We work together under one umbrella. It's the Asian Federation of Medical Device Industry or Asean. Okay, so this is the infrastructure. Okay, and entry. You see, Asean is around 654 million population. Is about more than 10% of the total world population. You can see the number 1 is Indonesia, okay, and you can see Philippines, all the country, okay, and then you can see their GDP, okay, per capita also. This is the information about its country, okay. Next, we are talking about the medical device market. How big for the medical device market? Okay, you see in 2011, 3 billion, 2016, 5 billion, and then this year, okay, we expect about 8 billion, okay. And you see the market, okay, we have a growth, okay, every year, okay, when we compare with the other country, okay, for the compound annual growth rate, okay, allow 9.7%, okay. This only for 6 countries, okay. But now we go into the deep detail, okay. For the Thailand, okay, you can see we have the export and the import, okay. In Thai baht, okay. Normally, the exchange rate is 30 baht per $1, okay. So you can divide by 30, you can get the currency in US dollar, okay. So we export and then we import also. You can see this the outlook, okay, import, okay, where we import from, okay, and we export to many countries also, okay. But the market for Thailand is the 2.33 billion US dollar, okay. So every year we increasing the importation, and we also have export to many countries also. Yeah. So next country is Malaysia. How big for the market is 1.94 billion US dollar. You can see the compound annual growth rate every year around 8.4%. The total medical devices, okay, market, okay, in the currency, okay, in Malaysian ringgit, okay, is 8 billion, okay, is around 1.94 billion US dollar, okay. Next country, okay, the third country, okay, big number third is the Vietnam. Vietnam, the market is 1.5 billion US dollar. You can see increasing rapidly every year. Okay, this one for Vietnam. And then for Indonesia, yeah, a lot of people, okay, but you can see the market, okay, around 1.19 billion US dollar. Next, Singapore, okay. So Singapore currently, okay, we hit at 1.3 billion Singapore dollar, okay, 1.3, and then it's allowed 967 billion US dollar, million US dollar, and then they expect next year allow 1.6 billion Singapore dollar. This one, okay, allow 1.19 billion US dollar. The number 6 is the Philippines. Okay, you can see all the, I have all the reference, okay. After this, okay, you can get the, maybe you can ask for the slide presentation and then you can go into all the website. Philippines, okay, currently the market is 745 million US dollar. The growth rate, okay, every year around 9%, okay. Yeah. But 2024 we reached at 884 million US dollar. And then Brunei is small country, only the population is 447,000, okay, population, okay, about 10.8 million US dollar. Okay, another country, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos, okay. The market for Myanmar is around 200 million US dollar, and the Cambodia is small market. And now also, okay, most of the product is donation from the another country, okay, to Cambodia and Laos, okay. So this is the opportunity, okay, since we have the COVID-19 pandemic, okay, this is the good opportunity to export this type of product, okay, to our Asian country, because all the Asian country need many product like ventilator, okay, you can see. Okay, and ECMO, ventilator, flow meter. Okay, this is the list of the product that we are very important. Okay, to save patient life. Okay, yeah, you can see all the list, all the sound machines, resuscitator, wound dressings, and then for the silence and with needle and without needle also, because we have the vaccination program for all the population, okay, in Asian country. You can see COVID-19 test kit, okay, and antigen and antibody also. Okay, this one. So these are 60 items that very essential medical devices, okay, to use, okay, during this period. And then for the future, okay, you can see this is the big market for everyone also, because in the ASEAN you can see the aging populations. Okay, currently is the 39 million. Now is about 58. Okay, another few more year and jump to 173 million, 15% of the total population. Yeah, this is the great opportunity, okay, for you, okay, to invest in the Asian country. Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. It was truly interesting to learn about Southeast Asian economies and tremendous growth of these countries. And now I would like to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Marilyn Marquette, Vice President of Operations of APEC Med. On daily basis, she runs operations of APEC Med Secretariat and is responsible for scaling up association's program offerings for its members. Prior to joining APEC Med, Marilyn led the commercial operations of several Singapore-based tech startups, medtech startups, and previously held various sales and marketing management positions at Bitcon Dickinson, International SOS, and Janssen. Marilyn, over to you.
Thank you for the introduction. I feel I have a very long career, but no. So will you share my slides? Yes.
Certainly.
Okay. So I can't see any of you. I could see the number. Thank you for welcoming me to that session. I'm learning myself, so it's always good, you know, to be part of those discussions. As you can see, I am not from this region. I'm French originally, so closer to Poland, but I've been living in Asia Pacific for a while now. I'm currently based in Singapore, where even though we wear t-shirts, there is a heavy rain storm outside. So I'm representing the APAC Med, and I'll introduce you what APAC Med is so that you understand how it's structured. I'm not focused on ASEAN only, but the entire region of Asia Pacific. Mr. Preacha that just did this presentation is someone that we collaborate with often, so we know each other, although we haven't met because of COVID. So it's interesting always. Next slide, please. So in a few slides, I'll skip them quickly. I'm going to introduce you what we do. APAC Med is what we call the regional trade association. So it represents the medtech industry. Our board, you'll see I introduced, it's really the medtech large corporate that you know of. And what I mean by representing the industry is that we are that voice of an industry towards the governments and the entire region. So our goal is to improve the standards of care for patients. And we are writing a lot of position papers to submit to many governments to move frameworks and policies in the right directions for the entire industry. Next slide, please. So a few numbers. I can see you're having plenty of numbers, so let's try to get those right. We are about 200 member companies in APAC Med, and it's about 2,000 individual members that connect, you know, with us. We have functional committees and working groups, but you can see everything on our website. Next slide, please. What might interest you more is that we have over 100 startups and it's growing. And as I wanted to share that slide because, okay, there's plenty of names, but what is interesting is the categories. And I have another slide which is geographically, but it's really spread in entire Asia Pacific. There are some Malaysian, Indian, Japanese startups in that, so quite good. And if you remember, the number before was about 200 members, half of it is startups. So the startups are really part of the ecosystem here in Asia Pacific. Next slide, please. So I was mentioning the board of directors, which is really impressive. It's like the who's who of the medtech industry in Asia Pacific, but basically the 14 top corporate companies in the medtech are represented at the board. What it means is that when we write a position paper, it's been reviewed by at least I say those 14 members. And when we submit it as the voice of the industry. We never represent one company, but the entire industry. Next slide, please. This is us, so you see me, but this is the team of APAC Med. So I wanted to show you who we are, so you know a bit who's talking. And we are based mostly in Singapore, but there's someone that was inserted and photoshopped here, and he's from India and based in India, and he's our representative in India. We have now, since this picture was taken, someone in China, but we haven't photoshopped them. Please, next slide. So what do we do? And I think it's important, considering you might want to come to Asia Pacific. We represent, we work on 5 main work streams. So the government affairs and market access. So we try to shape the policies, and then we have a lot of discussion on pricing. It's like everywhere else, when there's a pricing discussions or pressure, we have to answer. Regulatory affairs. I know there might be some questions here. So you have the, US that has the FDA. In Europe, we have regulations, but in Asia Pacific, it's not harmonized and countries are very much different. So we are working on what we call regulatory agility and try to find ways to have one country approve and accelerate the approval in the other countries. So that's a very interesting topic for regulatory, which is not the traditional way of seeing things. And last year in COVID, we accelerated the approval really fast, thanks to those agile processes. We work on digital health, and digital health means that it's not only the startups, but many, of course, you know that every medical device are connected. And if I take COVID and the ICU example last year or currently this year, in the ICU, a patient is probably connected to 12 machines at the same time. And that means that there are a lot of challenges in terms of cybersecurity, of interoperability. And there are no regulations in Asia. There are some regulations in some countries, but not harmonized again. So we work towards that framework harmonization in digital health. We are organizing a lot of discussions with Europe that has a model of reimbursement as well. So yeah, legal ethics and compliance. As you may know, every medical device company try to respect a code of conduct, but again, it's not harmonized in Asia. So we created a code of conduct for Asia Pacific. Some countries already have them. So in Japan, they have their own code of conduct. So we try to respect, and try to influence each other in getting better. But it's very much important to raise the education around compliance in this region so that we raise the standards of how we do business. And then we are irreproachable when we talk about healthcare. The last component we created, it's startups. So we try to nurture those startups and introduce them to large corporate, but there are more to this. If, for example, if an Australian startup wants to export in ASEAN, it's interesting for them to talk to us and we introduce them, but it could be introducing them to someone like Pritcha in Thailand, if it was Thailand, or a corporate or a distributor. So that's what we do. And that's the biggest slide. So next slide, please. Our activities, while we change slide, is pretty much around advocacy. So that leads me to this. We publish a lot of documents and papers that we submit in the entire region to preach for really harmonization and standardizations and frameworks. And again, I say it again, but we are representing an industry. So it's never one company, but the voice of an industry. Next slide, please. And so the first slide was pretty slide. This is what we did last year in 2020. It's less pretty, but that's all the position papers and submissions we have had to do last year. So you can see it's really spread across Asia Pacific. If you take our focus today in Southeast Asia, so Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, sometimes ASEAN or Indonesia. We work with the local trade association. We work with the governments, the MOH, and with the KOL locally to promote some frameworks. And we are usually also called to comment on a position, a paper that the government or a new regulation that the government might pass. Thank you. Next slide. So of course, to promote those frameworks, we organize events, and I just wanted to share with you the next two ones, but it's more for you to understand where we're focusing. So we will do a digital health symposium, and we are really looking at, the first session would be around the German model, who has found a way to reimburse digital health, and then looking at Asia Pacific, what are the use cases of digital health solutions in the remote care setting that have been monetized. Again, I am not using reimbursed because in Asia Pacific, it hasn't been reimbursed yet, but there are ways to monetize some of the solutions. And we're looking how to, support governments to build those frameworks in reimbursements. The next event after the next slide is the usual annual event that we run. So if you know about MedTech Europe, they do a forum, and we try never to be at the same date because we invite each other. It's the Asia Pacific MedTech Forum. So it's an annual gathering where about 1,500 people join, and we have a 2 days full, agenda. This year it will be hybrid. Last year was virtual, and the content is usually available on our website. We address all the topics that are of current discussions. Next slides. I don't know if I have many more slides. So the market size now. So I knew Preacher had a lot of figures. So if we take, like you said, yeah, if we take the Asia Pacific region, it's huge. It's 4.3 billion. And it shows that in Europe, we're really small because 60% of the population is here in Asia Pacific. I think the big trend that Dominica mentioned at the beginning is that 60 years old plus are more than 1/4. And it's important to understand that aging is a massive discussion on most governments' table. So if 51% of the population is here, only 30% of the GDP of the medtech industry is only 24%. So you could see that there's probably less investments as of today. But if I say this, it's a bit wrong because the growth is massive. So driven by higher healthcare costs. So based in Singapore here and being French, it's very different. You have to take your own healthcare insurance because the government's reimbursed at a different level. And so anyway, it's a different setting. The last bit is again a number. Next slide, please. So that's the Asia Pacific figures. And if you look at what Preacher showed before, you can see the size of ASEAN is a lot smaller for now. We're evaluating the market size of 150 billion in the entire region of Asia Pacific, and it's the second region globally. So we need to remember that. There's about 25,000 medtech companies. So I told you our board is 15 companies, but that's the 15 top corporate, Abbott, Roche, and J&J, but there are 25,000 companies, meaning there's a lot of local medtech companies, a lot of startup companies, distributors, and third parties. So it's all along the value chain. And we see the growth of new medtech companies in the region that are created for local needs. It's about 350,000 employees. And an important number that we tend to forget, it's about 400,000 plus HCPs that are trained every year by that industry. And actually in ASEAN, it's increasing massively. And the medtech industry is responsible for that training, I think, or took that responsibility, if I can say it this way. Next slide, please. So highlights, Japan is the largest. And if you compare 27 billion with the number Preacher gave you, Singapore is 1 billion. However, Singapore is about 5 million people, where Japan, I will say the wrong number. So you could see China growth and India growth are just massive and impressive. The other numbers I can share with you, like I said, the CAGR in this region is about 8.8 to 10%. Investment is massive. So in terms of investment, I think it's one of the first region. Next slide, please. This is just to highlight, the spread in terms of specialty. If you're in one of them, you could see that's the market share in this region. So the usual orthopedics and IVD are here, but cardiology is huge. And we know that the entire spectrum of cardiac disease are important here in Asia Pacific. So yeah, these slides can be shared with you. You could find this also information, probably some of them on my website. Next slide. Am I done? Yes, I am done. So thank you for allowing me to introduce myself and APAC Med.
Thank you very much, Marilyn. Thank you very much for introducing Asia Pacific as a region, as well as APAC Med. I believe it's a great place to be for startups, SMEs, as well as large companies. And that leads us to our final speaker in today's experts panel. Allow me to introduce Mr. Yibin Liu, Executive Director and founder of Access to Healthcare, global commercialization and market access consulting company specializing in areas of healthcare business due diligence, commercialization solutions from concept to market, and market access activities such as regulatory, quality, and trade compliance. Mr. Liu, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, very well. The
right.
floor is yours.
If you like, you can run the slides on my behalf. Is that right?
Of course.
Because since you have it open, right? Next slide, please. Just run the animation. This is just a title slide. So hi, everybody. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about a very specific topic. This is because there's only actually 10 minutes for everyone. So I just like to highlight several points with regards to a very specific topic, which I think at some point in time, Polish companies must be scratching their heads and feeling a strong headache coming on, right, which is regulations. Right. So I like to actually highlight certain things that you could consider in the sense of impact assessment with regards to entering markets in the ASEAN countries. So to start off, let's try to just run through very basic market entry steps. Right. Everybody starts with a go-to-market strategy. Identify country. What are the general methods? Then finally, resource allocation. So one of the areas that resource allocation now cannot allocate to is traveling, right? Which we will go through later, right? Normally, there will be a little bit more studies that will be done on the market to understand different country clinical workflows, which are all different, pricing, and the payer mentality, which Marilyn touched on briefly, right? Once you're getting to the next step of market access, then you would like to find a KOL, you maybe secure some kind of letter of intent for traction and maybe your first adopters. Then you start to prospect and then determine whether the country has any form of reimbursement. Just now we talked about, we cannot use this word, yeah. Then we get into the regulatory approvals according to the individual countries. Then while this approval is going on, this is when you do a promotion and awareness building. And finally, once the license is approved, and you can start selling, right? This is what everybody does. Next slide. What are the business risks today? All right, as you mentioned, the first problem is the lack of travel, right? This affects almost everybody doing business, including yours truly. I've never stayed in Singapore this long in my life. At least my professional life. This is the 372nd day I'm here, right? And I'm missing travel very badly, right? So because of the lack of travel, right, there's always this lack of market knowledge because you need to visit countries of interest in order for you to understand where to do business, how to do business, where do you get your food, and where do you do your shopping, right? Lack of deeper engagement with potential partners. So sometimes you may have struck some form of acquaintance, right, pre-pandemic times, and you would like to deepen that relationship, and suddenly you couldn't do that, right? And in terms of the actual situations in many countries, many treatments or many procedures are being deferred, right, reduced to only critical procedures, isn't it? And the other area that is a huge risk is because of the lack of intelligence, not in the brain part of things, but the lack of information, lack of awareness leading to being blindsided by new regulations. Next slide. All right. So if you do not know already, ASEAN is now governed in its regulatory framework by the ASEAN Medical Device Directive. So many countries have been progressing in implementing this in the country, and they are about there. I think by 2022, 2023, it should be fully transposed into their national regulations. Next slide. Right. So I give three very simple examples how companies can very easily be blindsided. Right. So everybody who has done business in the Philippines would know that in some of your products, basically you are getting an exemption. You can fly straight through because they were trying to implement the regulations and COVID struck, and as a result, everything got delayed. And that leaves a gaping hole to allow many products that are class 2A in Europe and above to fly straight through unless they are found in Annex A, right? So from the end of 2021, which is 2 months ago, right, they finally moved into another circular in which now all devices that are class 2A and above would need to go through CMDR, which requires the CST, which is the Common Salvation Dorsal template. This is quite similar to a technical file. The point being is that in the past, everything just flies straight through a distributor, and suddenly now everything gets stuck. So if you didn't know, right, so this is one of the things that has happened. Next slide. Thailand, oh, this happened only recently, last month, right, late last month. So their regulations also changed, right? So instead of the rule-based situation, the list-based situation now become a rule-based situation, from 3 to 1 being increasingly higher risk. Now you get 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So they're all different. That said, the license fee is also increased. You can see that in the lower risk class, it's basically grown tenfold, and in the higher risk class, it's basically grown about 4 to 5-fold. So this is a huge change, and actually many distributors are now stuck because the license just expired, and they thought that they just take a pre-sale certificate and just submit, and it'll be fine. Unfortunately, now it's not the case. Next slide. Vietnam. Now, this is something that may happen soon. Actually, it will happen soon. So at end 2022, it will fully transpose into its Decree 169. So in many cases, right, they're still depending on the import license scheme, which is based out of Annex Circular 30, right? And many of the submissions are actually not being reviewed. But if you did not put it there early enough, then you will basically fall under the backlog. So it does not mean that after 2022, if you register products of Class 2A and above, right, you will get it approved in 7 to 10 months. They have to first clear the backlog that was first created since 2018, all the way before they can start looking at new ones. So you have not submitted, then it's pretty much time that you do so. So again, right, the distributors may or may not have told you this, but here we'd like to just cite an example. So these are very simple and objective cases why sometimes you may get blindsided. Right, next. Okay. So how do we mitigate this risk? Okay. The first step to risk mitigation is acceptance. You can't change things because it's their regulations, right? So you just have to comply. So there's no point actually fighting over this, asking for any form of similarity with other regulated countries. No point, right? It's already signed and sealed, and that is final. So just do it. Okay. Now, if once you have gone past this denial stage and you've accepted it, and then you start to understand requirements, right? So law of the land, what does that mean, right? What are the appropriate methods to gain this knowledge? So this is where, right, many of you have many partners that are found in the ASEAN countries, which are all the distributors. So again, they are as confused as you are, right? So therefore, it's important to find very trusted sources to ensure that you do know what's happening at the ground and what's supposed to happen, so that you understand how to transition into all these new regulations. All of this will involve some Sorry, I think I got kicked out. Can you just move back a couple of slides? Back. Yeah, okay, so next slide. Right, so this regulatory impact assessment. So who does it impact, right? When regulation changes, right, it impacts more than just the regulatory department, right? It starts with design and development, whether there are new standards or new regulations to test products to, right? Whether there's any need for any process or part changes as a result. And in some cases, when they start to regulate marketing material, maybe that needs to change too, in terms of all your product claims, right? Maybe as a result of a new technical file, maybe you require more clinical evaluation, regulatory will have more documents, and in some cases, maybe there are more audits. Yeah, so factors for impact assessment will be all your legal documents, all those certificates, all those letter of attestation or whatever have you, your technical dossier, which in sense focus on its validation verification, software development, clinical evaluation, and any form of outsourced processes. Your instruction for use, your labeling, all needs to be taken care of. And in some cases, there could be new requirements as far as translation is concerned. So maybe English is not enough. Next slide. Right. So to increase your market entry chances and to ensure that you make sure that you do all these impact assessments correctly, always have a close pulse to the ground, right? Differentiate fact from fiction, right? Always ask experts. Verify regulatory requirements through various sources. What is actually implemented, what is not, right? What are the risks if you decide to go in a path of not complying to the letter of the law, right? What are transition periods? When are the implementation periods? All that has to be found, right? And sometimes if it gets too hard, right? Sometimes you decide that maybe I can't get through this one country. Maybe I can try 3 small ones. So sometimes you have to assess the effort, the time, the cost, right? To see whether that also gives you the right amount of revenue. So key factors depends more than just regulatory. Right, next slide. Yeah, I believe I'm done, right? So why do we get so specific over all these things, right? Is because our company, Access to Healthcare, is a consulting company that does market entry services. So we are actually physically executing a lot of the things that we talked about earlier, including market studies and so on and so forth. So that's the reason why we are able to share a lot of on-the-ground knowledge and understand that a lot of people are stuck because they cannot fly to see the distributors, right? So with that, I end my presentation. Happy to take questions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Libin. It was a fascinating presentation, and it's amazing how COVID had changed the landscape of regulatory and even such a basic needs as traveling and meetings one-on-one. That was the last presentation in our experts panel. I hope you find it all interesting. Once again, I would like to say thank you to our distinguished speakers for sharing with us their knowledge. And now I would like to invite moderator of the panel discussion, Mr. Jacek Kołomyniec. Jacek is head of Jakarta Trade Office. On the daily basis, he's advising and assisting various Polish enterprises in their expansion efforts on the largest market of Southeast Asia. Jacek, over to you.
Thank you very much, Alexander, for this brief introduction. Very good morning to all our participants in Poland, and very good afternoon to all the friends and colleagues who are currently in Asia, especially, of course, in ASEAN. My name is Jacek Kołomyniec, and I'm the head of the Jakarta Foreign Trade Office, and it's my pleasure to run the discussion panel here today. For the beginning, I have a kind request for all of those who have been kind of listening in the background. I would like to ask for your attention, because we have a really honorable and unique group of experts to whom I'm going to ask some extraordinary questions. When it comes to technicalities, we have approximately 40 minutes of time, and there is a Q&A session planned at the end. So let's see if time will allow us to actually conduct it. If it would not, I would like to kindly encourage you to contact us directly. We currently have 7 panelists for this session, so I will have a great pleasure to ask each and all of them 2 questions, and kind request to please try to keep your answers short and informative, ideally within 2 minutes. And I would like to agree with kind of a secret code with you. If I raise my thumb up, it means that you are doing well, but it's time to wrap up. Let's start with the representatives of ASEAN, and then the part will be followed by the representative of the Polish organizations and business. For those who have not yet had the pleasure to speak, I'll introduce them right before asking the question. So without further ado, let's start with Mr. Pricha, President of TIMED and the Chairman of ASEAN Federation of Medical Device Industry. Mr. Pricha?
Okay.
Yes, please unmute yourself. Welcome one more time. And the question to you would be, let's assume you're a doctor of business and you would be to write a prescription for a European medical company that would like to enter the ASEAN market. What are the key steps it should take during the first 12 months in Southeast Asia?
Yeah, I think it's depend on each country, because the in ASEAN, okay, not the same as Europe. Okay, we don't have the harmonization. Okay, mean that if the product enter into this country, and have to go to another country. Okay, so it's a specific, okay, by country. Okay, and if the product sell in this country, it not mean that you can sell to another country. You have to do the product registration. Okay, I give the advice that first, okay, to success enter in a country, you have to do a lot of work, okay, for the product registration in another country first. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Pricha. And the second question would be, let's say, a bit more targeted to Thailand. So I would like to ask you, which areas, in your opinion, represent opportunities for Polish-Thai cooperation? Mr. Pricha, please unmute yourself.
First, okay, your country is maybe very new, okay, in our ASEAN country, okay. So what we have to do together? Well, first, okay, we have to share all the information among your country and the ASEAN country, okay. And then we know each other, we know the contact persons, and then we can update, okay, all the new regulations, okay, and then we can do the business matching. We want to know from your country what you want to do in the ASEAN market. You want to looking for the distributor, or you want to looking for the partner for the research and development, or you want to invest in the ASEAN country. So we want to know exactly, okay, and then we can work as a business partner for the future, okay. So we can do a lot of things, exhibitions, trade, okay, and then we can do the like a sharing session, okay, together, okay, to your medical device company also, okay. Yeah, we can help each other and do together for the future plan and future business. Yeah.
Thank you very much for this answer. I think it's very true and very accurate, and I believe we are going to hear this suggestion a couple of times, that actually the building of some kind of bond and connection between Poland and ASEAN is definitely the first step. And therefore, I am very happy that we have this event today, which is this kind of first step. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Pricha. And moving forward, could I please ask Marilyn Marquette to turn on your camera? and unmute yourself because now I would like to take the pleasure of asking the two questions for you. And by the way, thank you very much for your very informative presentation showing the real potential of ASEAN. You know, an event this day wouldn't be a complete event if there would not be reference to COVID-19. So let me take the pleasure and direct this question to you. How medtech landscape has changed with COVID-19?
Thank you for the question. I have a few slides that you might want to show. I don't know if Alex sent them to you. Yeah, the trends. So I'm going to answer before you show the next slide. I asked the team, what could be the changes that we want to share, and looked at the three main changes for us. And in general, I think what we showed is that the healthcare industry, and I'm not saying medtech, collaborated. And the most obvious today is in the vaccine space. And that's probably COVID-19 that changed it. We've never seen two names tagging along vaccines so much. So that's great. I think the second is for the medtech only. We were a little bit of the hidden child of the industry, in the healthcare industry, the medical device. And somehow last year we were on the face of everyone. So unfortunately, but it was very visible. And to the world, they started to hear and know what was PPE, the alcohol, the ventilators. And I think that's an important part, because we were, as an industry, all of us at the forefront of a fight, and everyone started to wonder what was that industry. And I think we realized that we never really spoke as an industry. So it's fun because my APAC Med says the voice of medtech, but suddenly we became a voice, we became an industry, and that's the change for the industry itself. And then you can then show the slide. The most obvious one is digital health, for sure. So I was just pulling some numbers, and I think digital health was everywhere. Everyone has started to adopt digital health, whether it's from telemedicine, and I took some Singapore and China example that I could take from everywhere. You have some the telemedicine companies that are here are Indonesian, Malaysian, Singaporean, the first ones, and they saw a rise of their calls about 150%. So that's what COVID-19 did. And you have to think it's not COVID-19 that was treated by phone mostly, or telemedicine. It was the chronic conditions and all the emergency that we couldn't treat, going to the hospitals. And we also saw a transformation in that everyone was cautious about using digital health, but suddenly governments adopted it for public health good. So we've all been tracked, and Singapore, we were one of the first. So we are traced together and tracked. And I think it's very interesting to see this as a population health tool. And so, yeah, I think that's one. So I gave, again, some examples, Taiwan, but Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, they've been taken as examples. And in Singapore, the GovTech team who developed, the Trace Together app, was called by many governments to collaborate, and share their codes and outsource. So, and I don't think there was money involved. It was collaboration for the pure good. And I think, again, to my first point, collaboration is there. We would like to think that the ease into reimbursement will last forever. I'm sure Mr. Preacher and I will, or anyone on that panel would love to see this stay. And we often ask ourselves and our partners what will stick around. Hopefully this part, because the governments had accelerated not only registration, but a reimbursement of some of the technologies. So China, Indonesia, Japan, I put like examples, and there is nowhere in Asia that, it didn't get approved or reimbursed or supported. And the last bit, I have less word, I'm less technical, but I think we've seen, like I said at the beginning of my introduction, interoperability as a new trend, exacerbated in an ICU when, your 12 machines is plugged in you. So that's this. I think I have a few slides that I'd like to share, but very quickly, we run every year a survey with McKinsey as a partner. So those are in partnership. So these ones are the APAC numbers, and you see on the last column is ASEAN. And this year we will run the ASEAN. We are running now the similar survey to the ASEAN leaders. So we have between 200 and more, depending on the years, of executives that lead a medical device company in the country that answers some questions. And I think COVID-19 last year was expected to have an impact that was moderate. And what is interesting, if you look at it, China, India, and ASEAN had an impact for sure by the end of the year that is more than expected, but it's still growing quite a bit. So I think we need to keep hope on those changes. Yes, it did change, but the hope is there, and ASEAN is definitely leading. I mean, it's next to two massive countries, India and China, and you saw that the population is a lot smaller. It's probably half of it. I have 2 more slides, I think, please. Yeah, so this is reflection on the digital part, and these are concrete number. Most of the physicians will not attend in-person conferences or meet sales reps, but they will accept to interact with video calls. But if you remember 2 years ago, no, I don't want, oh yeah, I have to stop. No, I don't want to talk to you video, but now they are. So the training, the product, the purchasing is moving to digital. I don't know if the last slide is really massively interested. You can flip it and I'll say, this is to say that we've changed and the innovation paradigm has evolved since COVID-19, and the innovation that we'll see will be different than what we expected 2 years ago. I'm happy to share those slides afterwards anyway. So thank you. I try to go fast, but it's too hard. I had many more. Okay. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Marlene. I truly apologize for the time limitations that we have, but please stay with us because there is one more question to you. And I would actually like to connect it with the question that was asked on the chat, because I can see some relevance here, and you have also answered that question. So the question that I would actually like to ask to you is, what are the regional initiatives when it comes to regulatory cooperation in ASEAN, on the example of Singapore-Thai project, to shorten the registration path? Are there any other examples or regional cooperatives? And this is also related to the question from chat. Harmonization and standardization of the ASEAN medical industry aims to facilitate the import and export of medical devices between ASEAN countries. How's the progress? Has it been enforced? And what is basically going on in tightening the cooperation in the medical sector? So that would be the second question.
Okay, I'll go fast. I have no slides. I mean, I could find slides, but I won't do this to you. I think the important part in this, to answer this question, and that's what I did on the chat, is that ASEAN is completely fragmented. Yeah, it's very difficult to get a consensus, harmonization. So APAC Med's role is to really collaborate with all the local trade associations and the policymakers in each country and trying to find a way to influence each other in the right direction. It will take ages. I mean, it's been going on for a long time. However, there's this project that you mentioned, we call the Reliance Project, which is in fact a way for regulatory to be agile. And as we think about regulations and regulatory, we don't think about agility. That's not the first word that comes to mind. But last year, 2 things happened, is that WHO published a guideline for good practices and encourage this accelerations of regulatory agility, and Thailand and Singapore took the first step in showing what could we do, and I can share in one slide later, I mean afterwards, so you can send it. So Thailand has a new product coming in, and we'll submit it to Singapore to see if it's been registered, and if the process has been right, within 2 weeks it's registered in Thailand. It means that there is a massive transparency and reliance on the other country. If Singapore does their job right, then Thailand can accelerate registration. And this last year was very important. We saw a lot of test kits being approved and accelerated, and a lot of medical device being approved, registered faster. So that's the first part. And it's of course really interesting to work on this in 2 countries. But the right thing to do would be to expand, like you said. So we are looking at Australia to be a second country, to be a reliance project country, meaning if it's approved in Australia, can we accelerate in another country? So you could see also Singapore, Australia are countries that are regulatory wise very settled and recognized for their quality and high standards by the rest of the countries. So it's great to see this, and we look forward to have more of these reliance projects in the Philippines and Vietnam this year. Hopefully that will work. Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, and Philippines, and Australia as a second country to be relying on. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Marilyn, for this very informative set of information from, I could say, basically the front line of regulations in ASEAN. So once again, thank you very much. And now I would like to kindly invite Dr. Randy Taguh from Association of Medical and Laboratory Equipment Company Organizations in Indonesia, GAKESLAB. Dr. Randy has not had the pleasure to talk with us before. So let me introduce him very shortly. So basically, Dr. Randy has more than 25 years of experience in the health industry, with main sectors being medical devices and pharmaceuticals. Dr. Randy has extensive knowledge regarding regulations in the medical devices business, governance of both domestic and imported products. As Secretary General of the Association of Medical and Laboratory Equipment Company Organizations in Indonesia, Dr. Randy actively represents the association to interact with key stakeholders, being from both the business and government. Dr. Randy, are you with us? How are you doing today?
I'm good, Jacek. Thank you for the nice introduction.
My pleasure, Dr. Randy. And it will also be very interesting because the questions that I am going to ask to you are very similar to those that I asked to Mr. Precha. So the idea is also to have a regional perspective from you, but also a little bit of Indonesian touch in your answers. So the first question would be also the same, basically. So I think if Dr. Randy, you could write a prescription to a European company or Polish company that would like to enter the Southeast Asian market, what would be your suggestions for the first 12 months?
Okay, thank you. I think this is really a good question, Jacek, and it's about ASEAN. Even though I'm Indonesian, it's quite difficult for me to answer that. But probably because the question is about the prescription, I think because you notice I'm a medical doctor. Unfortunately, the answer is I think for ASEAN there is no one good recipe for fits to all. I think you have to understand all of the countries in the ASEAN market, which is as presented before by Kun Pricha, Marilyn, and Ibin, Mr. Liu, that ASEAN consists of 10 countries. Probably we can divide by 5 to 6 big countries: Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, Philippines, and Vietnam. And the other is so-called the small ASEAN countries. Each country have a different maturity or pace in terms of adoption of a regulation in a medical device. Let me step back a bit. The difference between ASEAN countries and EU is really a big difference, Jacek. So EU is one community of more couple countries, and they are one community in terms of business as well. In terms of ASEAN, we are not there in terms of business. So in terms of the regulation of medical device harmonization, we are just follow a directive. Means I think we still have a long journey, if not possible, if I may say, that if you think the harmonization of medical device regulation in one means if you can register your product in Indonesia, you can directly register or import your product to Singapore. I think it's still a long way. So it's different than Europe. So if your product registered in Germany, you can easily import your product to France, for example. That's the thing. So I believe all of you, the Polish company, have to understand medical device is regulated business. So this is the main common understanding in the ASEAN. So what you have to do is you have to understand first what is the country direction to each country in the ASEAN. What is the country direction of Indonesia, Malaysia, etc. And then after that, understand about the law and regulation. Certainly the medical device regulation first, and then after that follow the business regulation such as importation regulation, taxation regulation, the establishment of regulation, etc., etc. But if you would like to go to the country, there is only three ways, I believe, if there's not more. One, you go directly invest. Either you go invest to open your manufacturing or open your legal entity here. The second one, you appoint a partner. I believe you can appoint a contract manufacturing here in terms of a manufacturing, or appoint a local distributor to manage your business here in the countries in ASEAN. Or the third one, it can be hybrid. You can appoint on behalf of your company something like independent license holding company who can manage and hold your license on behalf of you in the country. Meanwhile, you still control the business. You just appoint a dedicated distributor to do the business only. That's the main probably mainstream access to market to the countries. After that, yeah, I think the best way you have to understand the regulation. Try to much as possible to collect the information to the good resources like the association, or even I believe police have a good way to put their representative in the country. Like you, Jacek, you are in Indonesia. I believe you already understand the Indonesian language, bahasa Indonesia. And then the tip is try to of each country because it's really vibrant, the 10 countries of ASEAN. Like now I moved to Indonesia. Indonesia now the direction of political from Indonesia actually is to invest, to attract more investors to come to Indonesia. Means if possible you try to find a way to do a direct investment. In Indonesia, you can try to open your facility of manufacturing here, or even to set up supporting manufacturing here, like lab testing, or even raw material testing, etc. And then if you would like to do collaborate with Indonesian company to be part of your production supply chain, like supply of some part of spare part, etc., and even contract manufacturing. Otherwise, or else you can still import your product, but in the higher level of technology. Indonesia, as you know, is consists of more than 17,000 islands. We have a big island, and then the logistic, the communication, the transportation is about. It's really difficult. So if you are on a digital health technology, you have telemedicine technology, it's really good to come to Indonesia because especially in the COVID-19 here, the digital technology here in Indonesia it's really going fast, and then it's really most welcome if the Polish company have a higher technology that would like to come to Indonesia. I think that's the best way I can answer your question, Jacek. Hopefully, I can address the answer correctly. Thank you.
Yes, very, very based on my experience, I would say that's very accurate way, at least to Indonesia, as you have correctly pointed out. Yes, I can speak Bahasa Indonesia, so this market is of course closer to my heart, but I think this strategy could also work universally for other ASEAN countries. And the second question to you, Dr. Randy, which I think will be a bit tricky because you have told me that I am the only Polish that you have met so far. So the question that I would like to ask you, how do Asians perceive Polish companies, and I think the second part was what areas represent opportunities for Polish-Asian cooperation. This part was already mentioned by you. So high technologies, telemedicine, that has already been mentioned when we discussed the changes of COVID with Marilyn, and of course countries who would like to set up their production in ASEAN. So let me ask you this: what should Polish companies do to gain some recognizability here in ASEAN?
Yes, Jacek, you correctly mentioned that the only Polish that I know is only you. And then actually personally, I know Polish because I think both country, Polish and Indonesia, have a same flag. It's a red and white, even though it's the other way around in the direction. But I think Polish have a good opportunity because I know in the environment of medical device business in Indonesia here, we are trying to look for another option or opportunity to find a sources of medical device technology other than from the regular one like the American, Japanese, Korea, or China. So I think Polish has a good opportunity. This event is really good. I believe if we can conduct this as well, so-called dedicated for Indonesia, I'm from the association, is more than happy to collaborate with you, Jacek, and the other person from the Polish Chambers of Commerce, something like this. It's really good, and then I believe you have to start earlier because as from the association, I noticed some other country also try to do this thing as well, this approach to Indonesian, because probably, as you know, Indonesia in Asian country is probably the most populated, have the most population. We are more than 270 million people, and in terms of political is quite stable. So I believe that's the good thing. And then, yeah.
Dr. Reddy, I'm sorry, I have to
Okay.
move forward because we still have really 10 minutes left. So thank you very much for this. It's again, the information, I think I could wrap it up, is recognition. That's the key word. So thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Randy. And the last representative from the ASEAN part would be Mr. Ibin Liu, who has already had his presentation. So I would like to kindly invite you to turn on your camera again and your microphone, Mr. Ibin Liu. Are you still with us?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So basically, since we're really running low on time, so I would like to ask you precisely, because you mentioned about the market entry steps, and the first one was go to market. So really short, could you say what would be the universal element of go to market strategy that hopefully can guarantee success?
I think that the most important step, right, is to manage expectations, right? Because every time there always a lot of upside, and nobody really sees the downside. At the same time, there's also on a different angle, expectations that ASEAN is too far away from Poland, and hence we get nothing done, right? Let's try to spend all this time getting into China, not knowing that China has 29 provinces and everyone acts like a different country. So one of the things here is to understand what are you expecting out of expanding into Asia. Then after that, plan that accordingly. So that in that sense, that first step, right, and to get your head straight on is very important. Getting onto knowing who the customers are based on the clinical workflow, I think would be a close second, because as you know, every country consumes healthcare differently, and some solutions maybe is not usable, right? Either from the pricing perspective or the usability perspective, is not usable, so you don't try it, and you redirect efforts to somewhere where it will work. All the other things with regards to the studies, to the regulations, all that, yes, they are tough, but they're also straightforward. Just give them what they want and they will do it. It's pretty straightforward downstream. So if you get your head right in the first place, then chances of improving your success. No guarantees here. Improving your success will be there.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. A very brief and a very precise answer. So now I would like to move forward to the representative of Poland. The first of one that I would like to invite is Mr. Arkadiusz Grądkowski from Poland. And a real quick introduction. Mr. Arkadiusz is Director General of the Polish Chamber of Commerce of Medical Devices Poland. He has many years of experience in the medical device industry. He served as health expert for Leviathan Confederation. He has also held the position of Deputy Director of Medical Devices Information Department in the Office for Registration of Medicinal Products, Medical Devices, and Biocidal Products. He has also acted as an expert for the European Commission in twinning projects in Moldova and Macedonia in terms of adjusting and creating countries' law on the marketing of medicinal products and medical devices to EU requirements. Mr. Arkadiusz, I would like to kindly invite you to turn on your camera.
Everything is switched on.
Okay, perfect. Okay, sorry. Okay, you are on a distant icon for me. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to introduce the Polish products to our dear guests. So what is special about the Polish products and how they can be successful in the ASEAN market?
Yes, thank you very much for taking part in this panel. I'm honored to speak with you and to represent Polish manufacturers. It's not easy question which you gave, but I would like to just in few words to tell you how the Polish economy in medical devices, Polish market of medical devices looks like. Mostly the Poland import the medical devices. We import from Asia also, we import from Germany, from United States, but from last years, the export of medical devices is growing rapidly. And it's the value of this market is systematically growing. The medical devices in Poland has a very good quality, and they are relatively cheap. They are in a competitive prices. It should be remembered that all Polish products comply with strictest EU regulations. So the standards that our products follow, they are very, very good. They are well known as a EU standard, as a products manufactured in Europe, the European standard. They're very safe. Our competent authorities, they check it very strictly. So to emphasize and to keep it in your heads, we are growing in this market. We have a very, very good quality and competitive prices to other European Union countries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arkadiusz. So the keywords would be great quality and competitive prices. I think we could conclude with that. I think I'll have to move forward. So if we still will have time, I will be very happy to come back to you. But in order to give equal chances to all the speakers, unfortunately, our panel is the last. So I'll pass on the voice and move forward to Mr. Artur Ochojski, who works for the Upper Silesian Agency for Entrepreneurship and Development, as well as University of Economics in Katowice. His major focus is set on international projects and support provided to business. His major focus is set on international projects and support provided to business. He's an expert in strategic management and application for foresight methodology. Recently, he has been facilitating collaboration between European medtech companies in Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, and Poland, as well as creating pan-European network of regional observatories of intelligent market. So, Mr. Artur, I would like now to ask you, since we already know what are the strengths of the Polish companies, could you please briefly share with us what challenges do the Polish companies face when they expand abroad, particularly to Southeast Asia?
Right, thank you for the question. If I speak for the companies that we have in Met Silesia, the cluster, I would say there are two basically challenges that we should face or we should solve. The first one is the size of the companies, because we're really working as rather small companies than the regular way you could see it in Europe, which would be medium companies. And I think this is one of those challenges that leads to maybe some kind of problems with scaling up of production. But I think it's something that can be discussed broadly. And the second one, I think it's basically very high entry barriers to market, which we already could solve by means of different types of activities that we were discussing today. And I'm really happy to hear so many interesting speeches and so many interesting messages that we could collect. I think if we talk about those two challenges, we could somehow manage them with a very sound position on the market, with more than 20 years being on the medtech market. I'm talking about the Met Silesia cluster members and the companies. So I think on the one hand, you can really see those challenges, but on the other hand, you can find some ways how to face them, how to solve them. Just to give you an example, you have the Exotech company that's dealing with those rehabilitation devices, and they have been already rewarded by Deloitte Technology with the Deloitte Technology Plus 50 Central Europe reward. So I think you can see those companies really facing up those challenges. And I think one of the ways we try to solve them would be also looking for those support instruments, as I'm part of the support agency, business development agency, that we are really happy to take over, which is the say the study visits or missions or trades or first participation to first. So I think all in all, even though the challenges are pretty high, at the same time, you can see some examples of facing them and solving the problems that they would lead to. Let me just stop here because I think the time is really running.
Thank you very much for keeping it very short and precise, Mr. Artur. Really appreciate it. And passing the voice to Mr. Piotr Więcek-Janka from Alvo. Piotr is working in sales department of Alvo Medical as area manager for region of Asia and Pacific. His responsibilities are sales and project management and product advisory for customers in countries in Southeast Asia in particular. He played a crucial role in expanding Alvo's business activities in ASEAN region. So the voice of a practitioner. So welcome, Mr. Piotr. And the question that I would like to address to you is, what surprised you most during Alvo's expansion to Southeast Asia?
Firstly, I would like to thank you for inviting me to this event. So it is very interesting. I have heard a lot of interesting things and interesting approaches from different sides. What surprised me the most actually is an openness from the hospital sides. Unlike the European customers who usually knows best, ASEAN customers tend to ask producers to propose something. Yeah? So this is quite interesting approach that we as producers, we as suppliers have a little bit more field to operate, and we can propose complex turnkey solutions for the hospital. So this kind of a product advisory is really important. Second thing that is very important in ASEAN region, according to my experience, is definitely, which is a universal idea for many businesses, is this customer-oriented approach. And of course, we have to take into consideration that there are different requirements from country to country. ASEAN is not that homogeneous as EU, that was already mentioned several times. Very important for penetrating the market is understanding the differences between each. There will be different requirements from the customers in Thailand, and there will be totally different requirements in Vietnam. And what surprised me also is that the strictness of some regulatory issues, especially in Vietnam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Piotr. I just got the information that we have 10 additional minutes for the panel, which is great news. So having you still with us, I would like to ask you about any mistakes that you have made during your expansion, during running Alvo's expansion to ASEAN. So could you please share, let's say, with the things that you would probably do differently, or things that you did wrong and there was no chance to fix that? Please unmute yourself, Mr. Piotr.
First of all, I think we have to keep aside the normal approach that we have on European markets. This is a totally different story. Yeah, so we shouldn't copy all the activities that we usually do with European customers, because the specifics of ASEAN region is so much different that we may be really running into trouble with, for example, regulatory issues. Of course, most of the countries in ASEAN is having very similar requirements as we have in medical directives in European Union. However, they have some kind of things that may be not understandable by Polish producers, by Polish suppliers. So definitely proper mindset is the key to have it run smoothly. Definitely one of the most important thing and the half of the success in ASEAN region is finding a proper partner. This is going to be already something that will help you out with all the problems, because of course we as Europeans, we may not have insufficient knowledge when it comes to, for example, regulatory issues. So someone on the end in the country on site in locally is of key importance to succeed in ASEAN region.
Great, thank you very much for this. And taking advantage of this extra time, I would like to come back to Mr. Artur. Mr. Artur, you still with us? Great, perfect. If you could share a bit on the Med Silesia members offer, what would be the most innovative products, or after hearing all this, which ones would you think would be the most suitable for Southeast Asian market?
Well, it's just an invitation to promote Med Silesia, so I wouldn't really focus on specific one or two areas of interest or competence. But I think with this, with the experience that we have, and I would say you can trust the members of Med Silesia. You can see a lot of efforts that they do in both medical robotics. You have the diagnostic devices, you have endoscopes, you have also all the furniture, hospital furniture, really important stuff with room equipment. Sorry, you have digital imaging, you have telemedicine, you have powering up medical devices. What you have to understand is that we are working as the very, very stable and very dynamic ecosystem with a lot of research and development involvement into getting this at the really high level. So from my understanding, you can have a great collaboration with cardiology, cardiosurgery, you have oncology, and you have also this the other areas that you can find easily on our website. So I think this is a great opportunity to start collaborating. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, we invite all the participants on the ASEAN side to get in touch with you and know more about the offer of the association that you represent. And I would also like to come back to Mr. Arkadiusz, if you would be so kind to answer one more question. I think the bottom line is that Polish brands, Polish companies need basically national recognition in ASEAN. So if you could share how we could build that better, how do Polish products stand out from other European products? What would be our national brand's asset?
Yes, it is what I said during my previous answer, the quality and the prices, competitive prices. But also we have, I would divide our products into parts. First of all our products are well established. As the previous speaker said, we have well-established medical devices like medical furniture, contact lenses, surgical instruments, sanitary articles like diapers, and they are very, very good quality and they are well established. The other products are modern products. Our society is very young, so we are very good in IT stuff. So we have a lot of startups with modern technologies, with telemedicine, with possibility of monitoring patients, users of medical devices. For example, we have KTG systems which allow you to monitor the ladies which are pregnant, and they are globally known. So it depends what you are looking for, but those two parts, like well established or very modern, it's worth to trust them.
Thank you very much for this marketing of Polish products. And to conclude this session, I would like to do a really quick run through the panelists from ASEAN, asking them all the same question, which is how to succeed in Southeast Asia. And I would like you to direct the answer to our Polish participants. And to make it more interesting, at the very end of this panel, I would like to answer you. I would like you to answer with just one sentence. So let's start perhaps with Mr. Ibin Liu from Access to Healthcare. If you would be so kind to unmute yourself and answer with just one sentence, how to succeed in Southeast Asia. What would be your tip?
Work hard and be persistent.
Thank you very much. Very powerful and accurate. And Dr. Randy, are you still with us? And would you like to give your one final sentence?
The sentence is try to do a local wisdom and think out of the box to manage this country.
Perfect. Exactly. Yes. Combine the local experience with your international point of view. Exactly. Very, very accurate. Marilyn, how about you? What would be your golden sentence to wrap up this session? How to succeed in Southeast Asia?
I'll complete the previous two. I'd say you need some cutting edge innovation. I've heard the pride of your Polish colleagues, but I think if you have the right innovation plus persistence plus local understanding, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for this. I think it really puts together all what is really important. And Mr. Pricha, we started this session with you, and I would like to kindly ask you to also conclude this session for us. What would be your one sentence on how to succeed in Southeast Asia? Mr. Pricha, are you still with us?
With you, okay. So I think it's the only one sentence, okay, is the choosing the right business partner, okay. You have to have a right partner, okay, and then your partner can help you, okay, to achieve your goal and achieve your objective, okay, for your business, okay. Right partner is the good, okay. if you choose the wrong one, okay, like a married, okay, you married with the wrong person, you're not happy, okay. If you have a good business partner, okay, right partner, and then you'll be success, okay.
Thank you very much. I think it's really super important to find a local partner. That's why I am okay with that you answered in more than one sentence. Really, if we put all the sentences together, I think that would be a very nice guidelines for the Polish companies to build a strategy on how to enter Southeast Asian market. Okay, I would like to thank you all very much to all our attendees and participants, to all our dear panelists. Thank you very much for your time, for your preparation. And I sincerely hope that this first meeting will not be the last, and we will have a chance to meet further on, either by representatives of the Polish investment and trade agencies, or the Polish businesses that we will be happy to introduce you to. So thank you very much. Wish everyone a great day, and look forward to see you again.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you everyone. Thank you Jacek, Marilyn, thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Yes, thank you everyone. Goodbye.
Hi Ibin, how are you?
Ty zakończyłeś wszystko?